How's it going, world? In today's video, I'm going to show you how to create a DynamoDB table using Boto3, which is AWS's SDK for Python. So whether you're new to cloud or trying to become a cloud developer, this is going to show you how to automate your AWS task. And this is going to be a step-by-step tutorial. So let's get into it. So there's going to be three things we have to do before we can continue this mini project or lab or whatever you want to call it. We're first going to have to install Python into our computer. Then after that, we're going to have to use pip to install Boto3. And pip is Python's package manager. It lets you install, update, and just manage packages and libraries with Python. Lastly, we have to install the AWS CLI, and this is going to give us access to AWS resources, and in our case, that is DynamoDB, using Boto3. So after we install it, we have to configure it using the AWS access keys that we will get from the console, and then we're going to have to set the correct permissions so we have access to the DynamoDB table, or just to DynamoDB. So let's get into it. All right, to get started, let's go ahead and download Python. I'm just gonna type in Python installation. Definitely been here before. So you're gonna have to go ahead and go to the python.org website. Go ahead and click on download. And I'm actually on a MacBook, so I have a Mac OS operating system. If you're on Windows, you would hit the Windows download. If you're running any other operating system, you would go ahead and install that one. I already have Python installed, so I'm not gonna go ahead and install it. I will leave a link to another video to teach you how to install Python if you do not know how to do so yet. So after you're done with the Python download, I would just go over to your terminal and just verify that it has downloaded. So for me, I'm just gonna type in Python version. And yes, this confirms that Python is downloaded. There's multiple ways that you can check to know if Python is downloaded. For me, I just feel comfortable using the terminal to check if something's downloading. You could go to your recently downloaded applications on whatever operating system you're running on to find that out. So our next step now is going to be installing the CLI using the pip command. So the command you're going to use now to install Boto3 is going to be pip install Boto3. The installation was successful. Now let me just go ahead and clear this, and let's just verify that it is installed. Pip show Boto3. And looking at it, you can see it is correctly installed. Okay, so now let's go ahead and head back to our browser and go install AWS CLI. So AWS CLI. So it's going to take us to some documentation on AWS. So this one is pretty straightforward. This is a documentation. It shows you how to install, update, and uninstall the AWS CLI. And then down over here, it shows you which AWS CLI version is compatible with the Python version. And in my case, I am using Mac OS, so I'm going to hit Mac OS. Scroll down over here. I feel like it's probably best if you guys go through and read this documentation just to get familiar with the commands in them. I've done this multiple times before, so I'm just going to go ahead and grab this command over here. This would be installing the latest version of the CLI. So let's go ahead and go back to our terminal. Just give it some time. Okay, let's go ahead and run this. Okay, so we should be done installing. We can go ahead and check by running this right here. So let's run that. And yes, it has finished installing. So I'm in my AWS console now. So let's go ahead and head over to IAM and create some new users and groups. And I am in US East 2. Let me change that to US East 1. Okay. All right, so create a user, set users. I'm going to call this user practice user. Then I'm going to go ahead and click next. I just double click it. We don't have any groups created. This is a brand new AWS account that I made, so there is no groups created. So we will do that after this. Let's do it right now. Actually, we'll call this database group. And we'll give it DynamoDB. Let's give it Dynamo. Let's give it. It's not the best practice, but we're just gonna give it full access to DynamoDB. So anybody in this group will have full access because this policy is attached to the group now. So let's go ahead and create user group. Let's go ahead and click next. Tag. So I'm not gonna add a tag. Create user. So now we have this user created. Now let's create a access key. And this access key is for the CLI, so it's going to be command line interface. Let's go down over here and click I understand. Hit next. I'm not going to add a tag, so create access key. So when you create an access key, as you can see, looking at this notification, this is the only time you're going to be able to see the secret key. So you should download it and store it somewhere you feel like is appropriate. But let me pause the video and take my credentials and store it somewhere. Okay, so now that we have our access keys, let's go ahead and head back over to the command line and configure it in our terminal. So just type in AWS configure, and now it's going to prompt you to enter in your credentials. So for the access key, you can see I have one previously used with a different account. To look at the credentials you just put in, you can go ahead and type in this command. It's cat squiggly line .aws/. I'm not going to run it because I don't want you guys to see my keys. But after you run this command, your keys will pop up. I actually will run it and just block it out. So there it is. Okay, so now that we have everything set up, we're going to go ahead and go to our code editor so we can start writing the Boto3 script. Okay, so I'm in my editor now. I'm going to go ahead and create a new file. Let's call it this Boto3 for DynamoDB.py. A bit bigger. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to import our Boto3 library. So import Boto3. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to use the Boto3 client to call onto our DynamoDB. So let's make a variable DynamoDB equals Boto3 client. So this is going to allow us to perform actions such as creating tables, which is what we're going to do, adding items, updating, and so much more. So now let's go ahead and go over to the Boto3 documentation that AWS has so we can get the syntax for defining what we want to create in our AWS environment. Okay, so I'm over here in Google. Let's type in Boto3 for DynamoDB. I've already visited this site before. So this is what we just did, except our variable name is different. So it's going to give you all the available methods on which you could do. So you can go ahead and create a table, which is what I'm going to click on in just a second. You can get items, delete items, even delete tables. So let's go ahead and click on create a table. So this is going to be the syntax you could use for defining things. If you keep on scrolling down, it's going to give you what is required. You can go ahead and look at this on your own free time. For now, I'm going to make this as simple as possible, so I'm not going to copy this whole code because we are not going to be defining all of this, just for, beginner's sake. Let me go ahead and copy this part right here. Go back over to my code. Let's paste this right here. Let's change this to the variable we just defined. Getting a syntax error, so let's close this up. Okay, so now we are going to define our attributes. So let's make this a movie database. I'm going to use movie ID to identify the items that are put in the table. So let's go ahead and type in movie ID. And then there's going to be attribute type. So S stands for string, N stands for number, and B stands for binary. This is actually going to be a number, so let's go ahead and change this. And then over here, you're going to be defining your partition key. So again, let's make this movie ID and change this to hash. So it's a partition key. So by setting it to hash, we're making it our partition key. If we were to have used range, that would have been our sort key. Let's go back and see if we can add. I don't want to do a secondary index or a global index. Okay, let's define the billing mode. Billing mode. Space back. Okay, there was no need for that space. So let's go ahead and change this to pay per request. So pay per request is used when you really don't know your traffic, and or it's your traffic's a little bit more flexible or unpredictable. Provision is when you have a better understanding of your traffic. In our case, we have no traffic. This is a brand new AWS infrastructure. Okay, so we actually forgot to name our table. Let's go ahead and name this table movies. Okay, now let's go ahead and save the file. Open up our terminal in VS Code. Go ahead and bring this up. Bring it up some more. Let's now when you're gonna run the code, you want to make sure that your Python file is in the current directory you're in. So you can go ahead and check by hitting ls. That is the name of our file. So now I'm going to do Python and then type in the file name, enter, and the table was created. Now we can make sure by going over to our DynamoDB over here, just to make sure. Now let's click on tables, and we see that it was created. Now you see that the partition key that we did define is here. It is on demand as we define, I think. We can come over here to indexes. We didn't create any indexes, so we don't see any. Same thing for global tables.